Hello and welcome to Spreadsheets for Accounting, Chapter 4, AAT Level 3 of the Osborne Books website, the spreadsheet functions. So in the first 3 chapters, we've really been doing a lot of formatting, and that's a lot of the exam. And now really, in the next 2 chapters, is the bulk of the exam, and what's known as spreadsheet functions, and what really we're going to be doing. So what are we going to be doing really in these things called functions? Well, we're going to be doing some simple maths, very simple stuff where we can use the spreadsheet as a bit of a calculator. We're going to have a little bit of simple algebra as well, where instead of just using it as a calculator and putting specific numbers in, we can refer to particular cells and then change those cell numbers there. So very simple algebra. And then we're going to have this other thing, which is going to be what's known as functions, where we're going to use words that are going to make Excel undertake actions for us and do things, these calculations, much more efficiently than we could do it ourselves. That's really all that we're going to be doing in there. There's a lot, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these 2 chapters into a lot of different videos and things that you will be comfortable with, and things that you won't, so you can decide what you want to watch. And that's what we got on the first page or the start of 99, but that's really what we're going to be seeing in the next 2 chapters. So let's look at the simple maths kind of thing, and let's have an equation equals 3 plus 2. So we can use our spreadsheet like that, and it makes it into 5. So we can use our spreadsheet like a calculator. And let's say in the C1, do the same thing. Equals 4 plus 3. Ooh. 7. Okay, so we could do that then. We could use Excel like a calculator. Is that going to be really that helpful? Not particularly. Right, so alternatively, we could try some algebra, shall we? So A plus B. Okay, that's what we know. That's what we're going to basically see in this is just a straight up algebraic equation. Very simple. Now, does that mean anything to Excel? No, it doesn't. Because here, A and B don't mean anything, but let's say instead of having A and B, we actually refer to the cell reference. So B1 and C1. Let's see what that does for us. So equals B1 plus C1. And you'll see how Excel is highlighted as well. This for us. So we can use, instead of algebraic letters, we could use cell references. And what does that do for us? Well, that will add them all up. Let's change that to 6, and you'll see it changes. Let's say that to 10, and that changes. So we can use Excel as we put in different numbers to recalculate for us quite quickly. So that's what we're going to see in there. And then in terms of the letters or the words that execute particular actions for us, I'll take you through those in the rest of the videos. So that's the first part of page 99. Now it talks about mathematical operators. Really, I think this is. I'll take this a bit longer really in here. And if you're not comfortable on this, I'm going to do a whole video next as well, looking at this. So really, this is sort of GCSE maths. So I've got an equation here, and we've got these things. What order are these symbols executed? So what order do they operate really, to give this answer? And hopefully you're thinking of a 6-letter word which is used, either bidmass or bodmass in there, or just the order. So instead of using what's in the book, let's just use bidmass or bodmass, which is what is used in GCSE. So the order that things are done is first of all brackets. So whatever's in the bracket will be calculated first. So here it would be 3 plus 2. Let's put that to the right there though. Okay, so equals 3 plus 2. Okay, so that would be the first thing that is calculated. And then the next thing would be indices or powers. So the cube root would be operated next. So we're going to have that. So it would be 5 cubed would be the next thing that would happen. So that would be 125. The next thing that happens is the divide. Okay, so the 125 would be divided by 5, and the 6 would be divided by 5. So we're down to 26.2. The next thing that would happen would be any multiplications. Do we have any multiplications in there? No, we don't. So we would move on. The next thing that we would do would be any additions. So the 4 would be added on. That gives us our answer of 30.2. And the last thing would be any subtractions, which we don't have. Okay. So that would be the order, make that a capital I, that you would operate your equations in. Is that anything in specific for Excel? No, that's just mathematics around the world, really. So that's the order in there. Now, it says on page 99 it gives some symbols here instead. So let's go there because it's missing one, which is our indices one. So the brackets are your brackets; they're the same. Instead of having little numbers here, what we would use is this little symbol here. So that symbol, and then say 2 after it, that would be to square. If you put a half after it in a bracket, that would be a square root. That would be a cube root, and that would be a cube. Okay, so that's what the powers thing there is. This little bracket here, this little symbol here, which is your shift and your 6 key, and then you start to work out what you want to put after that. Divide is the /. Multiply is your asterisk, and then addition, you've got a plus and a minus. So those are our symbols. Now clean that up. So those are our symbols for the order in which those symbols will be executed by Excel. And the way, and it's nothing new. It's just that's just the way in which maths is undertaken. I'm going to do another video on BidMaths where we'll just go through questions and get them right, because you do need to sort of make sure that you can understand that. Okay, so now we've got then the next thing which we're going to talk about is functions and explanation. Okay, so the last thing, and we'll go up to, we'll do some ranges and stuff like that. So we're now going to move on to some functions. So in a function in here, we're going to, let me just add another one in and make that bigger. Okay, so to start off a function, which is basically a set of words telling Excel to do something, we just use the equal sign. And now it's going to start to say, right, let's start doing things. So it could be a function of equal sign and that cell plus that one. Or alternatively, we're now going to put some words in. So we'll have a summation of that. Put a comma in. That. Okay. So we've now got some words going on in here. So the opening thing it sort of says on page 100 is example equals sum, and then it starts going through some cell references, and between it puts a little comma. Now this is a shortcut, so let me just write this one out in words for you. So A1, comma, A2, comma, A3. So because I've not got an equal sign in front of it, it's not actually switched on into this as an equation, it's just left this as text. So equals, so add up that cell, instead of having a plus, little commas, and actually what it does is it allows you, let's say we put some numbers in here. Let's put a few numbers together, like that, and then start to add these things up. Equals sum, and let's just start going, comma, that one, and that one. It's a fast way to avoid having to do the plus sign. You just put those things in. So that's the first function available in there. The items in between are known as arguments. So anything between commas are arguments. Now what we'll see here is that really important. we're probably going to use the function wizard quite heavily for where we see the need to have equations with arguments. So I'm going to simplify that up, and actually it cuts it up for you anyway, and puts the little commas in, so you don't necessarily need to worry too much about that now. You'll just see it over time. If ultimately you're wanting to try and write these equations in Excel, then you do probably need to start to understand where all the commas are going to be. Right, so we have an argument. It says here an argument can be required, or it can be optional. So let's open this up again and let's see what we can see here. Equals sum, and then we're going to go there, and then it sort of says here this thing in brackets now. So we got this one which is actually required, so we have to have one in there, and then we got these bracket optional versions. It's a little help from Excel. Is it useful? Will you ever use it? Probably not. It will be important when we get to things like lookups to understand whether arguments are optional, because sometimes you actually want to make them. There's options that you can use within Excel, but we'll use that when we get to it. Right, now next thing we need to know is range. So let me just highlight some cells here. That's a range here. So a specific range there though, from N2 to N7. That's a range. It now goes across columns. Once you go past across some columns as well though, so we've now got a range of several or three ranges here almost within one. It can also be called an array as well. You might call it a table, but it can be called an array, especially if you're looking up some kind of help on things like lookups. It will refer to that quite often as well. So that would be array. It's a range as well, but it's also, if we go past one column, it can also be called an array. So we've got this here. So we've got some ranges. So what's the use of that? Well, let's say we'll have equals, instead of doing this sum here, we're going to have this one instead, which will be sum, and then we're going to say M1 colon to M10, and you'll see that that is now a range there. Okay, that would be that range. Those are going to be useful, important later on when we start to do these equations. So that is the first part really of just understanding exactly what's going on in the spreadsheet functions thing. Next, then I'm going to start to go through specific equations. So what we'll do now is we'll go through this. Let's add another sheet in and make these a bit bigger, and let's start doing some, shall we? So abs. So what this is going to do is going to provide an absolute value. So let's say I put -2 in there, and I put equals abs that there 2. Why is that useful? Struggling to understand it myself. Right, let's say if I wanted to do a cube root, there's an alternative of square roots, and it's this equation here. That one. Now that would work on a positive number. It doesn't work on minus numbers. So sometimes you switch it. You have to use absolute. If you wanted to use that equation instead of that, then you'd have to get rid of that minus using this absolute value. Alternatively, you might not want to have minus values in there, and the alternative to that would be to be able to use if that is less than, let's go if d1 is less than 0, d1 times by -1. Otherwise, d1. Close the bracket. We're going to do that equation later on. So instead of doing this long equation here to turn that into a positive, and so what I'll do is I'll just put a little equal sign. There, you see how that turned it to a 2. So instead of doing that long equation there, you could just use this little equals abs, that one. So faster way. Important? Not really. Most people just use that. and no, people instead of using that equation use that one. So not that helpful. Right, into int. Okay, so what this will do is it will, let's say I've now got a number 3.15. Just get the format the cells and just get that to being 2 decimal places. Okay, so I got that number there. I want it to be just the 3, so I want it to round down. So I could go equals int. Actually, I'll leave the equation and leave the equals outside first. Int that cell there, D2, like that, and that would be the equation. Let's put a little equal sign into there first to actually get it to work, and you'll see how it's now rounded it down. Would you use that? Well, you can also have the other, an alternative option would be round down. And so if I put that in place and complete that equation, so round down that, comma 0 would be that one. Now, what did I have to do here? Why was this a little bit faster? Let me leave that equation. If I did that round down here, I then have to also decide the number of decimal places. So in here, I don't want any decimal places, so that would be how I get that to be the same. A little bit faster, yes. Again, most people use round down though. Right, so let's get into what things that people do use. So sum here. So we've already done this here. So let's go and I'll leave the equation out. So sum D1, comma D3, comma that'd be a circular reference. E1, comma and D2. Okay. So this is one way of adding it up without the pluses in. Another one would just be equal to go sum, and then we would come up with some ranges. So D2 to E2, a little colon sign in, to E2, and then this D2 as well. So we could write it out like that. We could add in specific things as well. We're going to add on 50 onto it. And if I put the equation, the equal sign in front of that equation there, you'll see it'll turn to the number. I'm leaving it without the equations in so you can see what's actually going on. So the sum one's really important in here. And you also as well have this thing called auto sum. So quite often what you'll really typically do is you'll use this up here in the home bar, this little one in here. I think sometimes you'll see it as well within the functions one. Whenever you see that there, it's a mathematical symbol, sum from 1 to n. So you can use that auto sum side, press that, and now we're going to start to do things. And we can either start clicking with little commas in between, like that, or we could start to use it and produce some ranges like that. Yeah. Let's change that formatting so to show you that it's the same number. 2 decimal places. There we are. Okay. And if we do our equals int off that, we'll see how it's going to round it down. So that's the opening bit then in terms of sums. Okay. Right, and then I'm going to keep going until the function wizard. So more on ranges. So I've got this range here. Let me go back. I think I've actually set this already up. Yeah, we have. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger. In here. So I've got this range of data in here. And you can see how I have called it in here sales. Okay, so I can, and now how did I do that? Well, it gives you quite a long-winded way of doing it in the book. What you can do, let me just copy these values into this page here. What you can do is you can just highlight it, go into there, So into this cell name over here and just type the name in. Now I've already called it one, so I'm going to have to call it sales 2, I think. And that is now named sales 2. You can see in this part over here, it's called it. So you can do that, which would save you a lot of the faffing around in the book. Is that useful? Well, I can now go equals sum sales. And it just produces it in a faster way. Yeah, you might use it, you might not. I mean, I don't think typically people tend to use it. It can be if you had a really long set of equations with a whole series of, say, lookups combined together. You might want to use it for that one. It might save you a little bit of time, or makes it just easier to produce it. But I must be honest, I don't tend to use it. Well, I don't use it at all. But you know, you might want to do it there. But the faster way was to just highlight the range in here and then just go and write it in that name box set up there. So I think that gets us through to the function wizard, which I'm going to go and do again for you now. So hope you enjoyed that. See you soon.